retired military colonel, and it wasn't anything. It was just a military.
I used to have the 45th Air Division. Well, you remember Wayne and Sue Bond? They used to come back here when Pease was out here. He was a lieutenant colonel.
Yeah, I think I know who he is.
Yeah. I mean, I had the 45th Air Division here every Sunday morning for waffles and champagne.
And you were teaching them?
And they, oh, listen, I'm probably the only person in the world who has been paid by the Air Force to go to different Air Force bases and lecture to them on UFOs.
That's what I try to tell people in the government, that the government doesn't know what the government knows.
I mean, when you say government, my God, we got everything.
Okay.
That must be one of the apartments.
Okay, we're going to start now.
I better
Okay, whatever you need to do.
at least put home. Who is that? That's either Daphne or...
I think it's one of those up there.
What's wrong, Sylvia?
Nothing. Got it.
I don't think it was locked.
Maybe that's why it's having a hard time unlocking. Apologize to you, your family.
You must be feeling better.
Yeah, I am. How you doing? You got company?
Remember Dick?
How you doing? Yes.
Hello.
That's-
Hi, how are you?
Nice to see you all. I'll talk to you later.
Oh.
What, video's going?
Yeah, I'm doing an interview with...
Cool.
I left you a note there.
I see it. I'll read it.
Okay, I'll talk to you later. Oh, I think, I'm not sure, but I think Daphne is on her way out today.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
She said that she's moving in with some other woman.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I haven't talked to them.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, Betty, we're set to go. And
oh, I was gonna go comb my hair.
sure, whatever you need to do.
You never met Betty before, huh? Never.
No, I've absolutely seen her and read the account, and
Her book is interesting. And she don't live that far from you either.
And interestingly enough, isn't it? And it's amazing, small world.
That's the sanest she's been in a long time. Maybe that's the way to control her. Blow my stack out.
Sometimes,
Instead of being polite.
sometimes it's the only way to do it.
Sometimes
Okay.
they're too easy going. So.
And we're set to go.
In other words, scare them so damn much they don't dare to be mentally ill.
True.
You want to shoot yourself? Would you like to borrow my gun? Sorry, you'll have to buy your bullets yourself.
Here we go. We're talking with Betty Hill, famous and first abductee. September 19th, 1961, Betty, while driving with her husband Barney, was heading south from Canada
Right?
when very early in the morning, he saw a strange light behind the car. It was September 19th. But what time was that, Betty, that this light behind the car appeared?
Well, we would crossed over the border into New Hampshire, and I think we started to see this light following. Actually, in the very beginning, I noticed a bright light in the sky, and I thought I was discovering a new planet until it started to move. And this was about 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. So we stopped the car and got out to see what this was. We thought it was a plane. So we stopped the car to get out to look at it. And that's when it changed direction and started coming in towards us. Now that was in about the Lancaster area.
So,
And then it followed us for about 30 miles. Paced our car.
and all the while, you and Barney were discussing it. What is this? What is that?
Yeah, see, Barney'd been in World War II. He knew planes. And he's trying to identify this. And it's flying in a very erratic manner, which was very puzzling to us. But this is 61. We'd heard UFO. Well, actually, in those days, they called them flying saucers. We had no idea what a flying saucer looked like. But we had no fear, just curiosity. We were trying to identify this craft.
You go on in the road. You decide to pull over. Barney gets out of the car.
Actually, that was in the Indian Head area.
Okay. Am I preceding something here when you encountered alien entities, or was this after?
No, this is the next step.
Okay.
In the Indian Head area, I'm trying to attract the attention of this craft. I'm telling it, come on in. Hi. I got the window down. I'm yelling to it. Hi. Who are you? My cat fell off the stool. And at that point, it left the top of the mountain, came out over the highway, and stopped in midair directly in front of us, maybe about 50 feet in the sky. So Barney got out with the binoculars in an attempt to identify the craft. And when he looked up, he saw a circular window with a bright light behind it, and he saw these men standing behind the window looking down at him. And at that point, the craft began to descend, and he became frightened. Ran back to the car saying he thought they were trying to capture him. So we got in the car and we went speeding down the highway to avoid capture. And as we're driving along, there's beeping sounds. That sounds like something was hitting the trunk of the car, and the car vibrated. And then we drove along for about another 30 miles when Barney turned off onto a side road. And here were the group of men he'd seen on the craft standing in the middle of this road, blocking our way. And naturally, he had to stop the car. And they came up in two groups, took us out of the car, passed in the woods to where the craft was on the ground.
At that point, strange thoughts started going through your heads, thoughts that weren't your own. Did you have some sort of telepathic communication with these entities, or?
All our communication was verbal.
Verbal?
Right.
Oh, interesting.
Yep. They spoke English in a limited way.
Huh.
Like, a foreigner coming here and not too well acquainted with our language.
But in the same time using common colloquialisms of the day, like you'll be back in no time or something of that ilk.
Yeah, well, in the very first part, they had us under some kind of control. And I brought myself out of this, but Barney was only able to bring himself out, partly out of it. So that I was just as conscious as I am right now.
They walk you into the craft up a ramp. The landed craft. This is right off Route 3. Well, actually, you didn't know where you were at that point.
Yeah.
But
it was right off from Route 3.
So they walk you up this ramp. You're brought in, and what did they say they were going to do with you? Well,
when we got up to the door, I was not going to go in. So I socked him.
You punched the entity.
Yeah. In fact, I put up such a battle that my dress is badly torn. And he said, come on. All we want to do is some simple tests. And as soon as the tests are over, we'll take you back to your car and you'll be on your way.
Let's just go back to those type of entities. They were your classic alien, gray-shaped, cat-like. No, they weren't. Okay.
They're a form of human being.
They were a form of human being.
Right.
Did they have cat-like or Cheshire-like eyes?
They had larger eyes than ours, smaller nose, and smaller mouth. No protruding part of the ear and no hair.
So
but they're people.
Nothing like these classic grays you see here, Whitley Street.
I don't know. I've never seen those. I don't know what they're talking about.
Sure, okay. There was a leader.
We gave them different names to identify him. Now, I don't know if he was the leader or the interpreter, but we called him the leader. And then there was the one who did the testing. We called him the examiner. There were 9 others who stayed out in the corridor, and we call them the crew members.
Okay. So you're on board. What do you remember? What you saw when you entered the craft? Did something must have taken you aback, saying this is amazing, or what type of craft am I inside? Can you describe as to what you collectively remember?
Went in to a corridor, and then I was taken into a room, and I had to step up because the level of the floor was above the corridor, and it was an oval-shaped door like we would see on a ship.
Do you remember at that point, did they specify what their agenda at that point was? Were you going immediately in for the examination, or?
They had taken us strictly to actually, they wanted to find out how we were like them or different from them physically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Did you feel that you were chosen for this, or you happened to be in the wrong area at the wrong time, or the right area at the right time?
Well, now I figure it was the right time in the right area. But I think I brought it on myself. You know, I'm waving to him and yelling to him, and hey, who are you? And
You get into the examination room. You're separated from Barney.
Right, he's taken into the second room.
Your examination, and again, all this comes out in later dreams and hypnosis, but immediately do they remove your clothes and perform? What happens? You'll have to. I'm tainted by all the popular lore of abduction stories.
Well, see, I don't know anything about those stories.
That's good. Well, you're better off.
But I was taken into this first room, and it was quite bare. There was a small table, there was a stool, and then the wall, there were doors in the wall that would slide back and forth. And they put me on a stool, checked my eyes, ears, nose, throat, my feet, my hands. And then he put me on a table and said they were going to check my nervous system. And they used some kind of equipment to do this. And then he tried to insert a needle-like instrument in my navel, which caused pain. So they stopped doing it. And then the examiner left and went into the room where Barney was.
Can you describe what was happening to Barney, what Barney recalled under hypnosis? What was going on at the same time in his examination room?
With Barney, most of the exam was the same as mine, except they were interested in his bone structure. I mean, they were feeling all up and down his spine, his arms and all, basically.
Did Barney recall any struggle akin to the struggle that you had, where you had a torn
No, because
thread?
they had him under this control, and he wasn't. Was very upsetting to him because he couldn't move.
So they had implemented paralysis, some sort of temporary paralysis on Barney to subdue him, whereas to you they gave you a little more leeway as far as you weren't.
Well, I'm small. You know, I was smaller than Barney, so I didn't get such a big dose apparently.
So they saw him as more of a fear, perhaps.
Right, he was bigger than them, taller.
Your examination concludes. Then what happens?
Well, while the examiner is in doing Barney's exam, I started talking with the leader. And I said, I know you're not from this planet. Where are you from? And he showed me a star map. And he explained part of the map to me briefly. And then we just talked about food and different aspects of life here. You know?
And what? Give
Well,
me some.
actually, what led to the food was the examiner came running back into the room where I was and started tugging at my teeth. And he wanted to know why Barney's teeth were removable and mine were not.
And the story is Barney had dentures.
Yeah, during World War II, Barney got too close to a hand grenade and knocked his teeth out.
And they were totally confused by
That
all
was
of
very
this.
puzzling to him. Yeah.
And humorous.
Yeah.
Any other instances that something that as a human you took so general as a characteristic that you never thought of it, that they got confused by, almost childlike, you know, akin to the denture incident?
Yeah.
Was there anything else like that they seemed that, boy, you don't know that you can recall?
Well, they were sort of disappointed. I didn't know anything about the solar system.
Okay.
That I think they really expected me to be able to identify the map.
They were actually upset that you didn't recognize their
Right.
home. Let's go to that. Marjorie Fish,
Right.
months later, or years later actually.
Years later.
Under hypnosis. Tries to induce you under hypnosis to redraw that
No,
straw.
no, no,
okay.
no, no.
Maybe you can go over that.
No. Dr. Simon at the time.
Benjamin
said,
Simon.
Dr. Benjamin Simon said that during the week, if I wanted to, I would be able to remember the star map, and I would sketch it. But I was not to think about it. I was just to let my hands go ahead and draw it, which I did. And that was in 1965.
4 years after the incident.
Now, in 1969, Marjorie Fish came here and stayed a few days and asked me all kinds of questions, hours and hours, which she taped. And then used that to go back home and
Took
did
your
the
map.
research, did the research on it, and identified the areas.
The area of the star map, which she said was in the constellation that we know, Reticulus, in the star system was Zeta
Reticuli, yep.
And from that point, do you remember them mentioning Zeta Reticuli, or is that a terminology that we as
That's
Earthlings
our
have given
name.
them? So,
I would have no idea what their name
Okay.
is for their home planet.
and do you remember what type of star system? Was it a white star? Was it a yellow star? A red giant? Do you recall what type of star or anything?
It's, I don't know, but I do know that our astronomers believe that the stars on my map were the ones most likely to have planets and have life, as we know it.
And so they may be younger stars, hotter stars.
Actually, we're believed to be 4.6 billion years old.
Or 20 billion. It seems that we
But
age a billion years every 5 years. So.
But actually, Zeta Reticuli, we believe, this is a belief. We don't know for sure. But we believe it's about 11 billion years old. So they've been around a lot longer than we have.
Over twice as long, and then the chance to evolutionize to project. So this puzzling incident, you're examined. You get a tour of the spaceship.
No.
Or the craft.
No.
Did they show you anything? It's just only on a need-to-know basis.
Just the one room I was in.
The interaction with you and the question and answer session was more than Barney. They did not give Barney the opportunity to inquire.
No, there was no conversation with Barney.
You
I enjoyed myself. I had a great time.
Mm-hmm.
He joked. We kidded.
really?
Yeah. I invited him to come back. I could say, please, please, please come back. Oh, I have so many friends who would love to meet you.
So this was not a traumatic experience at all.
No.
It was an enlightening experience.
Oh,
spiritually uplifting,
Right.
perhaps.
Right. It was. Nobody can tell me there's not life on other planets.
At the same time, it seems that 36 hours after the sighting is on record, according to Jacques Vallée, at 2:14 a.m., Pease Air Force was tracking an unknown object.
Oh yeah, I told him that. Pease Air Force Base released the radar report where they tracked this craft. Sent 2 planes out to check it out, and the reports of the pilots are still classified, so we know they just saw it.
To the skeptic, that kind of knocks them out of the water. Then, if for you to guess, if this were a concocted story, boy, you know your stuff. It's a pretty well orchestrated event to have Pease personnel involved, and that Betty and Barney, Barney was a postal worker.
Yeah.
Postal worker. You're involved in real estate, and that you pulled off a grand hoax through the Air Force. It's nearly impossible, if not impossible, absurd, I guess is the term I'm looking for. You're released from the craft. You get back into the car. You check your watches. Why?
Well, I don't think we checked our watches until we're almost home to see what time it was, and both our watches had stopped functioning.
And you could not account for some time elapsed.
No, we realized the trip had taken much longer than what it should have. Maybe about 2 hours.
Were you feeling woozy? Did you have a headache? Did you have any physical? Were you just exhausted? What can you describe what your feeling was?
We've been driving all night. We got home about 5 in the morning. We're calm, we're relaxed.
Oh, so you weren't...
Feeling very well.
You didn't feel traumatized or
Oh,
injured
no,
at any
no.
time or should I say violated at that time?
No.
You go in the house, and I guess is it the next morning you check out the car, and
Find this
what happens when you look at the car?
highly polished spots in the trunk of the car. And that day, we were getting tropical rains from a hurricane that was going through. And it was heavy downpour. And didn't affect the spots at all. They stayed there for months.
Your sister, who claimed to have seen a UFO, suggested that you do what around the car?
She talked to a physicist who said go out with a compass and check out the spots, which we did.
What happened?
And the compass was very, very erratic.
Almost spinning, or
Yeah,
just?
it was, and we tried it on different other parts of the car, and it didn't react that
But
way.
just near where the spots were.
Just the spots.
Hence the inference being a magnetic anomaly.
Yeah.
Something was really distorting the magnetic draw of the compass. At that point, afterwards, do you contact CUFOS, Dr. J.
No.
Allen Hynek, or what is the sequence of events?
No.
Does Walter
First
Webb
of all, we didn't do anything.
Okay.
And then NICAP in Washington.
Okay.
I wrote to them because I wanted to know, being exposed to a UFO, close range, was there any health problems? Were we exposed to radiation? What kind of dangers?
They dispatched Walter Webb as their
That was
representative.
later.
Okay. So NICAP has that. That letter winds up on the files of the Center for UFO Studies with Dr. J. Allen Hynek.
It might have, I don't know.
You never ever communicated with Dr. Hynek?
Oh yeah, we became good friends,
Oh, really?
but that was years later.
Okay.
We did numerous TV programs together.
Okay. What was your feeling on Dr. Hynek? Was he obviously a thinly veiled skeptic
Oh no. He
when
believed
he-
every word of it.
at the end?
Yep. Oh, I mean,
It
as soon
seemed-
as he met us.
Sure. I think that his take on the UFO phenomena when he was humiliated with the swamp gas incident.
Yeah.
Have to trot out an absurd explanation for an event in front of a college dorm, I believe, in
Yeah.
Michigan or near the Great Lakes. That's when he said, all right, enough, that he saw that the government was masquerading, or at least trotting out disinformation and misinformation on the UFO phenomena.
Because when he first started, he was working for the government. Yeah.
So, Dr. Hynek and you were great friends then?
Oh yeah.
Great.
And I know many. And I believe Dr. Heinek's son, there's a son who used to, I don't know about now, you live down here in Massachusetts.
Oh, okay. So, you're having some troubling dreams now. Is that what happens at home?
Oh,
After the
actually,
encounter?
10 nights after this happened, I had a series of dreams for 5 nights. Each dream was different, which later I found out was a recall of what had happened.
And the dreams were depicting what you just described to
Right.
me. At that point, what do you do? Is it starting? Is Barney troubled by all of this? Is Barney?
No,
Has his life pattern changed? Has his mood changed at all, or
actually,
any physical?
well, the first thing I did was each morning, during the next day, I wrote down what I could remember of my dream.
The following day, which would be
Right.
the 20th.
And every time I had it, no, I didn't,
I'm
it
sorry,
was
10
10
days,
nights
right, sure.
after.
So we're talking the 29th, 30th, roughly.
Yeah. And I made a record of these
38
dreams.
years to the day. Okay.
And then I took and put them away. And then later, several months later, I talked with my supervisor about the meaning of dreams.
And
Then she said, well, maybe it happened.
suggested, or did she
No,
connect you
we
with
we just talked about it.
So, Barney, I mean, life's going on as usual. You did mention it's not that you had these total memory blockages of what happened, but you knew it would happen, but it wasn't dramatically affecting your lives. You're curious more than anything.
Curiosity.
At that point now, Walter Webb, representing NICAP, comes. Does he get involved in the picture?
He came and interviewed us a couple of times.
Interviews you. Walter's a very highly esteemed researcher, one of the original.
Yeah, but see, actually, I would say 3 weeks after this happened, the United States government got involved.
Did you notice anything strange? Odd vehicles around your home where you followed?
No.
Your prototypical Men in Black. Did you see any of those?
Now, they called us from Washington.
They were
Said they
straightforward.
heard about our experience, liked to meet us. They were scientists. They had an interest in UFOs.
So-
And so they came, and we had continuing contacts with them for years.
So
The United States government. One time we even got together and camped out was 26 of the top scientists in this country, and Jacques Vallée was one of them.
Wow. So there was no subversion or subterfuge going on with the government. They were straightforward out of curiosity, and then no one was mocking you or highly skeptical.
Oh, they were looking for information.
You know, and because this was a highly unique case, and it represented a different genre in the UFO phenomena, whereas it was a close encounter, I guess, of the third kind, or would you call it a fourth kind, where you were abducted? I know that those are the classifications given by Dr. Hynek.
But I know
it was a landed craft. You saw occupants and you went on board it.
no, and the men who came, got in touch with us were from the White House, National Security Council, NASA, and let's see. Yeah, these were the top
The
government.
big dogs.
Right, right. And the first thing they said to us, stay away from the UFO organizations.
And that's, I'd like to reemphasize that to anybody listening at home today. Oh, good for you. You're your own person.
Right, they said, we want to know the facts. And we don't want you to even with the possibility of being influenced by something else. So stay right away. And I always have. And I still have contacts.
It gets to the spring of 1962. Problems start happening with Barney. What's going on with Barney?
Barney started to, his blood pressure was fluctuating, and he was having anxieties. Well, see, Barney was working the midnight shift, too. So he's driving to Boston, South Station, every night. Had to be there, I think, midnight. And, you know, he's getting home, getting through, at 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. He's trying to sleep during the day, and everything just built up. And he got sick physically.
Lack of sleep can compound itself.
Yeah.
At that point, did you equate that to the incident of September 19th? Did you think it was directly related? Was he having any sort of nightmares, or was just he just couldn't get his sleep?
He couldn't sleep, and he was like, he was before we started going to Dr. Simon, he'd leave here, start to drive into Boston to go to work, turn around, come home. And he'd just say, I can't do it. I'm too exhausted. I don't feel good.
Enter Dr. Simon.
And then, no, he wasn't, he was going to his regular family doctor, who's prescribing medications and all, trying to treat him, and he's not improving. So his doctor thought maybe he had some kind of emotional problem that was preventing him from healing. So he sent him into a psychiatrist in the same office building he was in. So Barney started going to Dr. Stevens on a regular basis, talking about his childhood and his mother and his father and all. And one day Dr. Stevens said, what did you do this weekend? And Barney told him we went up in the White Mountains looking for UFOs. And then Barney told him, and he's the one who referred us to Dr. Benjamin Simon, who had been one of his teachers in medical school.
Dr. Simon puts both of you under hypnosis, records...
Now, let me get straight about hypnosis. What you hear and what you see is stage hypnosis. We had medical hypnosis, which is the kind that's used in surgery.
Medical hypnosis, it's a highly trained psychologist or doctor as opposed to a charlatan with a watch dangling back and forth.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And Dr. Simon, at the end of World War II, had been the director of the Mason General Hospital in New York City for the treatment of servicemen coming back from World War II who had emotional problems. And he was so highly successful using medical hypnosis that the U.S. Army did a documentary of Dr. Simon's work. And in the beginning it was 2 hours long. But then, in 1980, around there somewhere, they shortened the film to 1 hour, and it was shown at public PBS stations, and the name of the film is Let There Be Light. And if you could get a hold of it, it is one of the greatest things you ever saw.
So this man is has a lot of badges, I guess, in the
Oh,
field
Dr. Simon?
of psychiatry, but he's not somebody that would lead questions. He's like you said, he brought a lot of men out of battle fatigue that were emotionally scarred in combat,
Yeah.
and the casualties in World War I alone of shell shock.
Yeah.
That men, if they had been treated by trained physicians, and they could have been saved and
For
almost been brought
example,
back to normality.
in this film, there's a serviceman who's brought in a wheelchair. He cannot walk. Now, he'd been hit by shrapnel. It all had been removed. There was no reason in the world why he couldn't walk, except he couldn't. So he's lying on the bed. Dr. Simon puts in medical hypnosis. And he says to him, get up and walk. He says, jumps out of bed and walks. And he's walking around the room, and he goes over to the nurse, and he's crying, and he's saying, look, I can walk. I can really walk. Dr. Simon puts him back in the bed, brings him out of the hypnosis, and the first thing this patient does is he looks at Dr. Simon, real worried look in his face, and he says, do you think I'll ever be able to walk? And Dr. Simon said, I'm sure you will. And at the end of the movie, it shows him outdoors playing baseball.
So Dr. Simon could help people will their way through agony.
Right?
This is brought to the public's attention in 1968 or 69 when a movie is made. When it became, you were known obviously through newspaper accounts, but you were brought worldwide, I guess, publicity or maximum publicity when the movie was made.
No, in 1965, reporter from a Boston newspaper heard about our experience and without ever meeting us, published it for 5 days on the front pages of the newspaper. It went all over the world at that moment.
Without having met you, he took
never
liberties.
met us.
He took liberties with the story, and there were some inaccuracies.
Yep.
Like what's
Well, he was pretty accurate. I was amazed. I still don't know where his source was.
Can you do you think that maybe one of your government contacts had leaked this information to him and had orchestrated somehow to get this to the public consciousness?
I never thought of that. I don't know.
Okay. What myths do you want to dispel about your encounter and things that they fail to mention? Either they fail to mention when people think about the UFO incident with you and Barney, and what are some myths that you'd like to dispel about that? If you can think of any liberties. I've learned some stuff, for instance, tonight. I always thought that they were almond-shaped entities with the alien. You said no, they were very much human-like. They spoke to you verbally as opposed to telepathically.
Right. And we had a great time.
And you had a great time.
And if you wait a minute, I'll go get Junior so you can see what Junior looks like.
Okay, sure, absolutely.
Oh, John,
Yeah.
she's got a picture hanging on the wall over a bed there that I took of a UFO out of your neck.
Oh, okay. Damn, that would make a nice cut.
See? Another thing.
Oh, okay, Junior. Fascinating.
Another thing, I never called them aliens.
What did you call beings? What was
Astronauts. I called them what they were. Astronauts.
Okay, sure. That's what they are. I mean,
Right. So this is Junior. Now, this is a sort of a composite of what they look like. There's individual differences. They do not look alike. There's as much difference among them as there is around any group of people. But this basically shows the characteristics. The larger eyes, nose, mouth, no protruding part, no hair. But this is because he fell off the podium in St. Louis.
Oh.
And cracked his head.
Oh, okay. So, but he's okay though. But he has a pronounced brow ridge.
Yep.
As you said, a pug nose, more or less a very small orifice for a mouth. And actually, instead of whites, actually have yellow eyes and eyes. I see irises and a pupil.
We put the yellow in
Okay.
to emphasize them.
I was going to say he needs Visine or he looks like he has malaria, but okay. But,
Okay, now, Junior has been evaluated by I don't know how many physical anthropologists. But what he looks like now, if we continue along the path of evolution, this is what we're going to look like in 25,000 years.
And would we be mammalian, reptilian, or insectoid, or a combination of the three? I mean, because if you look at the way we're on our way with the nuclear, there was a nuclear exposure in Japan, for instance, and radiation causes mutation. And if you look along the lines of evolution, we lost our appendix, for instance. People say we'll lose our little toe because we don't need it.
Yeah.
The brain capacity gets larger.
Oh.
We become more spindly because we don't need muscles because it's mind over matter. Correct? Is that the?
No.
No. Okay.
We're gonna be like we are now, except, I mean, look at mankind has been around for, what, 2.6 million years?
Depends on who you talk to, I guess. It's so subjective.
So
So
well, they've got the bodies.
so that's basically what the astronaut looked like.
Right.
Can I ask you something? When they put that needle back on board the craft, they put the needle into your navel. Some have speculated that perhaps they were taking eggs or ovae, or no, you don't
No.
think so?
No.
Because some have projected that. Isn't it interesting if you correlate that with test tube babies years on?
Yeah. Well, of course, you know, at the time this happened, doctors said, oh, it's absolutely impossible to put a needle in someone's navel. It would probably kill them, or they get infections. And then I think the process was developed in a hospital down in Houston, Texas.
Shortly afterwards.
Yep.
Did they perform any function like that with Barney then?
Nope.
None whatsoever.
No.
See,
There
another
was
myth
absolutely
dispelled.
nothing sexual
See,
at
and
all.
that's another myth dispelled, because there was always that overtone in some of the accounts of your story. So it's good to get that clarified.
And absolutely no sexual. In fact, you know, we're having these different methods of producing children. Maybe we won't have any sex in 25,000 years.
Yeah. Or maybe of us, well, I won't go there, but it's even tough in 1999, let me tell you. I want to ask you about, after this incident, you are catapulted into the limelight. Not only are people relaying similar experiences, you start hearing from people who have similar experiences, and you're probably saying these people are imagining it on one hand, others are very legitimate. Did you start hearing?
First of all, as soon as our experience became known, we became a central point for people to report sightings. And then after the movie, the UFO incident, then we had people, because the movie was in 75, and that was after Barney's death. They were calling me saying, oh, I think I've been abducted. And so then, as a social worker, and I use Dr. Simon's formula. When people tell weird tales, it can be hallucinations, delusions, fantasies, or something, they're recalling something they've seen, heard, or read.
Mm-hmm.
And when you rule out all those, you may have the truth.
Mm-hmm. And they can't use the using something you had read. People tried to equate that you had taken from the Villas-Boas case, which happened 3 years after your incident in 1964, which is an absurd and an impossibility for you to predict 3 years in the future as to what an event would occur. Villas-Boas, for people listening at home, was a Latin man who was abducted, or claimed to be abducted, by a spaceship and was, I guess, sexually accosted by a female alien on board a spaceship. And skeptics like Phil Klass, if you want to go after Phil right now, you can.
Phil isn't that important.
You know.
I always tell Phil he only talks that way to try to make money on my reputation.
Let's go there for the skeptic. I'm known as a paraskeptic. If you believe, I probably don't. If you don't believe, I probably do. I amalgamate my theories from both schools of thought. You're both right, you're both wrong. There are some on the far end of this alien culture that have these impossible stories that I cannot comprehend. And then there are the absurd, closed-minded skeptics who will denounce anything without even giving the possibility that this instance could be real. I think that if I come upon something that's unexplained, my job's complete. I'm looking for hoaxes and I'm looking for misidentifications. Let someone else figure it out.
Now let me say this, as far as abductions, there are real, honest-to-God abductions, but they're not known to the public. I know probably about 12, and most of them involve 2 or 3 people. And 50% of those people who have been abducted are in the emergency room at the hospital within 4 to 6 hours.
Because they're convulsing, or?
No. They have breathing difficulties. They lose their sense of balance. Their eyes won't focus. They have different, 2 men in Maine had I think it was brown and yellow marks around their necks, around their eyes, different parts of their body.
Was this the Allagash incident? Ray
Oh,
Fowler?
no.
So they're traumatized. So what you're saying is abduction, the ones that aren't readily known to the public, they're very almost
They're real.
violent occurrences because the physical traces left over, the physical repercussions.
I mean, there's something more than just saying, "Oh, I think I've been abducted." I mean, they've called the police and said, "Take me to the hospital."
You don't consider yourself an abductee, but a passenger. I think that's refreshing. A tour. You don't. Do you consider yourself an abductee?
No.
Even though popular literature points to yourself and Barney as the first abductees because you were the first to.
I call it. We had a meeting.
Mm-hmm. So after,
I mean, like Columbus came here and the Indians met with Columbus.
A cosmic caucus. So the movie comes on. You're a clearinghouse for information. A lot of people are coming to you, some with stories that you can't believe, others that you see that they're truly traumatized and victimized. They ask, what can you do to help me? You probably answer, I can't do anything except you can only take consolation in others who have shared your same experience. Was that your advice? That's my advice to abductees.
Well, if anybody comes to me and says, I think I've been abducted, the first thing I say is, stay away from it, UFO investigators. Do not have hypnosis.
I'm going to get a t-shirt with that on it.
And then, if you've really been abducted, you'll begin to remember it yourself. You don't need anybody to tell you. And you will begin, and you will gradually remember the whole thing. Such as John Salter, who was teaching at the college in North Dakota. And he got in touch with me and said, I think my son and I have been abducted. Now, both of them are college professors.
Mm-hmm.
Only his son was teaching in California, and father's teaching in North Dakota. And the two of them would get together, and they're going to Mississippi on this trip when it happened. Well, they come back home, and they're separated, and both of them begin to recall exactly what happened. No hypnosis, no nothing. They remembered the whole thing.
The UFO investigators start calling you, but the government's calling you. The scientists from all branches of, like you said, military intelligence, I'm sure universities, everybody's got a solid scientific inquiry. There's no skepticism at that point because of your sincerity and your consistency of testimony.
Well, for, I don't know, about 5 years, I guess it was, I did college lecture tours, which was a lot of fun.
Sure, meeting the young people, the young minds.
And then, you see, I invited the UFOs to come back, and they did. Not here, but as a few miles from here. And we went out, we had volunteers, we covered the area almost every night for about 15 years.
Okay.
And we had scientists, we had labs with testing equipment, we had the military, we had half the people who lived in town observing, and we got loads and loads of information about UFOs, but we also got hundreds and hundreds of pictures.
Sightings, because over a 15-year period in southern New Hampshire, you orchestrated watch groups.
Right. We had all these volunteers, and when I did the college lecture tours, I used about 85 different slides of UFOs. But not just UFOs. UFOs doing different kinds of things. Like a carrier with 9 discs coming out of it.
Wow.
I mean, I had a $89 movie camera.
And you have a film of a mothership.
Actually, what I did is I sent the movie film to a friend who's a psychiatrist, projected the movie film onto the screen, and then took his camera and snapped slides. And then I showed the slides in my lectures. And I got, people don't realize what a huge variety of different kinds and shapes of UFOs there are. And also, they usually travel around in a squadron of between 150 and 200. So if you see one UFO, keep looking. There's an awful lot more. They don't travel around alone. That's why the military doesn't attack them.
How many different types of entities or races of people? Let's, for instance, you met somebody from Zeta Reticuli.
Right.
How many different space entities? Are they all from Zeta Reticuli? Are they
I have no idea. All I know.
many? Is that the term?
All I know is these crafts are flying together in squadrons.
Okay. Usually
They're
probably
all together.
emanating from the same.
I don't know where they're all
solar
coming
system.
from.
Okay. And they travel in squadrons, and this is only based on visual observations that you've taken personally. How many UFOs, for instance, have you seen, do you think? It's impossible. Hundreds, we'll just say, right?
Thousands.
Thousands, okay. And you can't see them on demand, but you have a sense as to
We have
where
to
they
know
would
where they
appear.
go.
Okay.
Okay.
Anticipating.
Would you like to see a picture of a landed UFO?
Sure. Oh, I'd love to, yeah.
Okay, I'll go get it.
I'll keep Junior right here company. All right. Junior is the clay model or plaster depiction of the entity that Betty saw on September 19th, 1961. Betty, as far as the UFOs, what's the largest one you've ever seen? Motherships we've heard a mile long. Do you believe that? I'll have to ask that when she comes back.
Most UFOs are small.
Most UFOs are small. Small, say the size of what, an automobile, the size of an airplane?
About the size of a car, a little bit bigger.
Okay.
But usually when people say, oh, I saw this huge one, actually what it is a lot of little ones hooked up together, flying in a solid mass. Okay. This is the landed one.
Mm-hmm. Wow, you can actually see pods or three legs,
Yeah.
let me point it out right here, of the craft. So this is a landed UFO, New Hampshire.
Yep.
No?
Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
Looks to be at dawn or dusk, or is that's the light being
Dusk.
given out by the craft?
Yeah, it's beginning to get dusk.
So you're looking more or less west
Yep.
for that photograph.
Yep.
What year was that taken in?
Well, sometime in the 70s.
In the 70s. Which,
Okay, this one would come in every night and land.
Same spot or generally
Yep.
same vicinity?
Same general area. And then others would come in, fly up to this one, and then go off. So I always call this one the headquarters. This is where they come in and get their orders for the night.
What town? Just give me a hint. I know you don't want to sell out where your place is. Or...
Sorry.
Okay, good. All right. I tried though, didn't I? I did try. We're gonna have all we can say is southern New Hampshire. That's all
Yep.
we can say about that.
And
Is that-
also, this one has, actually there's about 14 lights. And they're all lighted. But sometimes they'd only have 2 or 3 lights. Sometimes they have red lights, green lights. See, you could see the legs on it.
You almost had a feeling to go of where to go for this. When you had your group together, you had an inkling. Is that what I'm getting now? That you had an idea of here's where to go. If we hang out here long enough, we're going to see them. And
No.
No, okay.
Now, driving to my mother's house
Yep.
at night, coming home from her house at night, usually Barney and I would be paced. Like, we'd have a UFO on each side of the car. And then they'd go ahead of us and we'd follow them. And they led me to these spots. They led me to this spot.
Do you have a feeling these are the same entities that originally abducted you on September 19th?
I don't know. But I assume they knew them.
So you,
I assume they had some kind of record.
all right, what, just from the same squadron, so to speak.
Yeah.
Okay, so those UFOs land, they just land. Obviously, you didn't walk towards it and try to touch it or get close. The idea was just they'd land, here we are. If you want to take your photos, take them now.
Actually, if a person tried to walk towards it, they would come up and dart towards the person.
Scared.
And it
Walk
scare
charge.
the person to leave. Or sometimes they'd just take off. But usually they just sit there.
When was the last time you saw a UFO? This being 1999.
I looked out the window the other night and 2 of them was flying.
Wow.
But it was a very, very poor sighting. I could tell it was a UFO because of the altitude and speed and lighting.
What do you think about cloaking possibilities? I've heard stories that I could be standing next to somebody that sees UFOs and I can't see them if I'm not at a certain angle. Do you...
If you can't see them, I'd suggest you have your eyes checked.
Okay.
You need glasses, baby.
Yeah, okay, so in other words, that they when they make themselves appear, they appear to everyone, not just to certain people.
Right.
Okay, so there's nothing to do with this new age vibrational Great.
I don't know anything about
okay,
that.
Good. That's another good thing I'm going to put on the T-shirt. Let's talk about now. You get catapulted in as the UFO authority. You're invited abroad. Tell me about the Europe's reaction or Soviet Union's reaction in how you were treated and who you met, etc. If you could maybe just give me a brief overview of, say, when you went to Europe.
I've even been on TV in China.
Okay.
In this way, a filming that was done here was sold to China, and they had somebody speaking Chinese for me. Also, same thing up in Montreal. I'm speaking French. Everywhere I go, I'm speaking the native
And
Japanese.
they're just dubbing in the voice.
Yeah.
So it's safe to say that this phenomena is worldwide, or is it just the interest is worldwide, or have you heard from all remote parts of the earth of people recounting similar incidents to yours? How would you describe this phenomenon?
Well, it's worldwide, naturally. Like, I mentioned that my son was retired Navy. Well, he was stationed in Japan for many, many years, and he had a Japanese wife. And then he got transferred to this country, and this was in the 60s. And she brought with her publications about UFOs from Japan. And I still have them.
Wow.
And half the article is in Japanese, and the other half is in English.
So let's look at the UFO phenomena. They're increasing. The government obviously doesn't know what they are, and that's why they're coming to Betty Hill, first-hand witness. They're trying to learn just as much as everybody else. So the government has to tap into the UFO subculture and the UFO researchers as to gleaning information. That brings up my next thing about Roswell. UFO crashes. I have the opinion that there are either no flying saucer crashes or there's an entire litany. You can't have just one. What's your take on UFO crashes and on Roswell?
My opinion, that one UFO crashed because a little lieutenant came out and made a public statement. And no little lieutenant comes out all by himself and does that. He's got to be cleared from the top.
We're talking about Walter Hout, the press information officer at Walker Field and Roswell Army Air Base.
And he came out and said it, and so it happened. Then the Pentagon came in and said, oh, no, 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 no.
No, 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 meaning you shouldn't have said that, or no, 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 you're totally wrong.
You see,
let's forget about
let's take a good look at the American public. If they came out and said UFOs are flying here, everybody would be saying, they're violating our airspace. Shoot them.
Right.
If you don't like them, you don't understand them, you kill them, right?
That's right.
That's the American way of life. I really think the government is protecting UFOs.
Well, let's go take one step further. The government, I think the window of opportunity for disclosure of UFOs' existence by the government has closed, and like you said, because the public would say they've been flying in our airspace all along. The next Congressional Defense Budgetary hearing, they'd slash line item after line item and cut their budgets, number one. So there is no defense against them. They have not shown to be an aggressive phenomena. Right. They could have shot down our fighters. We have the Thomas Mantell case. We have a case in Australia, the Valentich case, where people unfortunately encountered UFOs and disappeared or had some sort of craft malfunction. These instances are going to happen. Hence, that the
case in Australia. A friend of mine was in Australia when that happened.
The Valentich case, 1975 or 76.
A friend of mine was in Australia when this happened, and actually met with the parents of this man. I think he was 19 years old, 20, something like that. So now we're out in the area where the UFOs are, and we're yelling to them and asking them to bring them back to us.
And you were asking, pleading to bring them back.
And they're actually coming right in close to us, like they were trying to hear what we were saying.
Well, so you are a center or focal point, or somehow you tend to attract UFOs. Is that if Betty Hill wants to see a UFO and puts her mind to it, UFOs will come?
No. But sometimes I say that I think it's almost like a atmospheric change of some kind. I can be sitting here, and I can UFO go over the window, and there it is.
Okay, so you have a feeling. There's something, an urging.
Maybe it disturbs the air currents or something in a way that I recognize.
Just briefly, back to Roswell. So your take on Roswell is, did that incident happen or not, or is the point moot? It's not even worth discussing.
Oh, I think a UFO crashed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yep, and I think it was recovered. No, I don't know if bodies were recovered or not,
Well,
but I think a craft was.
well, if bodies weren't recovered, it was either A, remote controlled, or B, they were picked up by a safety rescue flying saucer.
It could have been, okay, because we had a UFO crash here
Where's here?
in my area.
In southern New Hampshire.
And I went out there and all the people running, UFO crashed. Oh, maybe we ought to call the military. Maybe we ought to call the police. And I said, no, go home and leave them alone. If it crashed and there's anybody alive on it, let the others come in and rescue them.
Can I ask you where this happened and when?
Very close to the picture.
Southern New Hampshire again, that's all we'll get. But what about what time, what year, it's something like this? And does C-SETI know about this, that has a catalog of flying saucer crashes?
This was never reported.
And guess what
And
year?
the next day, I went out with a neurosurgeon from Pease Air Force Base, thinking that if it crashed, and if one was killed, they might have left the body behind. And we searched the whole area. Because if we could find the body, we're going to bring it back and put it in my freezer.
Mm-hmm.
And he was going to do an autopsy.
Oh.
And then we were going to call the whole world to come in and see it.
That's right. Ray Santilli included, the British guy who...
But we didn't find any bodies.
So...
But we did find where it crashed.
What year was it?
I don't know.
60s, 70s?
70s, I would
70s.
say.
Okay, so do you remember when the people were coming running out of the woods, did you see any object impacted? Did you see any
I didn't see
glow?
no, but what happened is when the UFO, okay, this man is stopped at a stop sign.
Mm-hmm.
And the UFO came crashing right straight down, just missed his truck.
Mm-hmm.
And then it went along through the woods and it cut the trees right off.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And this place probably 25 feet wide. And this is what everybody's running after the UFO, following where all these trees are crashing down. And that's when I got them all to come back and go home and forget it.
So, UFO crashes are frequent then?
Well, I think probably quite often a craft malfunctions. And then they get out and you repair it and take off.
Do you think the military has ever shot down a UFO? Leah Haley in Pensacola, Florida claims to have been on board and abducted by a UFO that was shot down by an electromagnetic pulse beam weapon by the United States Air Force in Eglin Air Force Base. You don't buy that at all?
No. I know that they shot a piece off from a UFO.
Mm-hmm.
And they send it outside this country to be analyzed.
Mm-hmm.
And the scientists in that country were not able to analyze it. And so the scientists took it and packed it away up in his attic. And in 1975, the CIA called and said, send it back. So they had to go up in the attic. It's sputtering. Got to go up there and go through all those boxes, get that damn piece out, send it back.
Mm-hmm. Parts are coming forward now to the International UFO Museum in Roswell, some claiming to be of extraterrestrial origin. Some has been traced back to just a China or pottery maker in Denver, Colorado. I saw the pieces of debris. It looked to be some sort of piece off a bumper of a Volkswagen, in my opinion.
Oh.
You've got the charlatans, the hoaxers, that are going to come forward and say that this is a piece of a UFO when it is indeed is not. And then you have other pieces of material that have an odd metallurgy to them, an odd atomic and isotopic structure. So what you're saying...
Oh, I've had stuff analyzed that I've picked up from UFOs. Most of the stuff, no matter what it looks like or feels like, the puzzling thing is it dissolves in water. That they can't figure out.
Almost...